On February 5, 2026, the French Navy officially confirmed that the Charles de Gaulle carrier strike group had moved from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic to take part in ORION 26. At first glance, this may look like a routine force rotation, but in reality, we are seeing something far more serious. A rehearsal for large-scale, high-intensity coalition warfare, focused not on symbolic flag showing, but on resilient command and control, logistics, and sustained multi-domain operations over time. The key to understanding this development is that ORION 26 is not a collection of disconnected episodes. It is a coherent strategic construct in which France is testing whether it can do more than merely participate in a potential major conflict in Europe, whether it can act as one of the nations shaping that conflict's operational architecture. The scale of the exercise supports this interpretation. 24 participating countries and around 10,000 personnel, including one carrier strike group, 2 amphibious helicopter carriers, 25 major combat units, roughly 50 aircraft, 40 helicopters, approximately 1,200 drones, 2 male UAVs, 6 ground-based air defense systems, about 2,150 tactical vehicles, and a space layer supported by around 20 sensors. This is no longer a tactical brigade versus brigade format. It is a practical test of whether a prolonged campaign can be sustained with naval, air, and ground forces, digital infrastructure, interagency mechanisms, and political leadership all functioning simultaneously. Compared with Orion 23, there is now a clear shift from a large demonstrative cycle to a more applied model of protracted conflict. In Orion 23, the main effect was validating the general framework of national coalition response. In Orion 26, the emphasis is noticeably tougher, less attention to how an operation starts, and much more to maintaining tempo, regenerating forces, sustaining logistics flows, and integrating the military effort with interagency governance. Put differently, if the previous cycle confirmed the ability to assemble quickly, the current one tests whether that force can avoid operational breakdown in the second and third weeks of high-intensity combat. That is exactly why the carrier group's move to the Atlantic matters so much. In contemporary European military logic, the Atlantic is not a peripheral theater. It is a vital artery through which reinforcements, munitions, fuel, repair capacity, and overall Allied connectivity flow. If sea lines of communication are not secured and supply routes are not protected, even a strong continental force begins to lose operational tempo and eventually combat effectiveness. In this context, Charles de Gaulle is not merely a symbol of France's maritime status. It is an instrument of operational flexibility that can sustain an air component where land-based infrastructure is vulnerable, overstretched, or exposed to missile and cyber pressure. The carrier itself remains a highly serious platform, around 42,500 tons full load displacement, 261.5 meters in length, a 64.4 meter flight deck beam, roughly 9.5 meters draft, 2 K-15 reactors. Total output of about 83,000 horsepower and a top speed of up to 27 knots. Its catabar configuration with two 75-meter steam catapults enables launch cycles suited to high-intensity operations, while the Orion 26 air wing package of 20 Rafale marine fighters provides capacity for air control, escort, strike, and interception missions within a unified coalition concept. A practical point is especially important for the audience here. Under high-intensity carrier operations, the key metric is not simply how many aircraft are embarked, but whether a stable daily sortie rate can be sustained. In this class of training combat model, planners typically look at the ability to generate repeated sortie waves without degradation in maintenance quality, weapons handling, and flight safety. Even a theoretical range of several dozen sorties per day can create substantial operational added value for a coalition. But the critical issue is endurance, how long that rhythm can be maintained. Over the long run, victory is not decided by the first 24-hour spike in activity, but by the stability of the cycle: launch, strike, recover, regenerate, relaunch. It is equally important to look at how the strike group is assembled. Based on available reporting, the deployment includes the air defense frigate Alsace, the Horizon-class air defense destroyer Chevalier Paul, the Italian destroyer Andrea Doria, the fleet replenishment ship Jacques Chevalier, and a nuclear-powered attack submarine in the escort structure. This is not a random grouping, it is a balanced architecture combining air defense, anti-submarine resilience, extended maritime protection, and long-cycle logistics. In modern warfare, the challenge is usually not entering an operation with impact, but preserving intensity through weeks and months as equipment losses rise, munition stocks are consumed, crews fatigue, and command networks come under stress. Sustained at-sea replenishment is therefore decisive, because without it, even a powerful task group quickly becomes a short-duration force. The anti-submarine dimension deserves particular emphasis because it often remains invisible to general audiences. Any Atlantic supply line is vulnerable not only to air and surface attack but also to subsurface threats, and anti-submarine warfare always consumes major resources: escort ships, maritime aviation, helicopters, real-time data exchange, constant search area shifts, and strict convoy routing discipline. If a coalition begins to lose ASW control in a long campaign, the cost of every supply transit rises sharply, delivery tempo declines, and the front eventually feels this as shortages of ammunition, fuel, and spare parts. That is why integrating the submarine component and rehearsing ASW procedures in ORION 26 is not secondary. It is one of the keys to sustaining the entire operation. It is also highly revealing that ORION 26 is structured around sequential escalation in four interconnected phases. First, translating political objectives into a real operational plan, then deploying and entering a contested theater, then simulating pressure on national territory and infrastructure through an interagency format, and finally integrating into a NATO command framework. In practice, this means France is training not for a single military episode, but for the full cycle of modern war, where frontline operations, homeland resilience, cyber pressure, information confrontation, and allied decision mechanisms are inseparable. A major professional marker here is that the scenario explicitly integrates hybrid pressure tools, governance stress, civilian consequences, and the need to preserve political control while combat intensity rises. The figure of roughly 1,200 drones must also be highlighted because it reflects a fundamental change in the nature of the battlefield. Unmanned systems are no longer merely an auxiliary ISR asset. They have become a mass, expendable instrument for persistent surveillance, targeting support, air defense saturation, and acceleration of the find-fix strike cycle. This implies that Orion 26 is testing an environment in which the concealment of large platforms is reduced, decision speed must increase, and the cost of command error grows significantly. At the same time, integrating cyber activity across all phases and linking the space layer, including the connection with Spartex 2026, reinforces a central thesis of modern warfare. Outcomes are shaped not only by the number of platforms, but by the resilience of command networks, communications, data flows, navigation, and the ability to maintain a unified operational picture under continuous digital pressure. Historical context adds another important layer. Charles de Gaulle is not a new platform that is only now learning war. It has operational experience over Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq, and Syria. Orion 26 therefore combines real accumulated carrier and coalition practice with a newer model of long-duration preparation. In plain terms, we are watching European military thinking move away from short expeditionary paradigms toward preparation for prolonged interstate conflict, where decisive factors are not the visuals of day one, but the ability to sustain 30, 60, and 90 days of campaign activity without losing command coherence or logistical integrity. In measurable terms, France's success in Orient 26 will be defined not by headline statements but by concrete KPIs, whether command continuity was preserved under multi-domain load, whether the coalition maintained a unified decision tempo, whether critical logistics disruptions were avoided, whether procedures remained interoperable across national contingents, whether planned sortie and escort rhythms were sustained, and how effectively interagency structures managed simulated pressure on infrastructure and population. If stability is demonstrated across these parameters, then France can credibly claim progress toward the role of a framework nation able to lead a large coalition operation over an extended cycle. At the same time, a professional assessment must acknowledge constraints. A single carrier, however capable, cannot physically cover all potential directions at once. High-intensity operations rapidly consume expensive munitions and accelerate platform wear. Complex digital architectures increase dependence on network resilience and exposure to cyber disruption. And long-term coalition success always depends not only on military resources but on the political endurance of governments, societies, and economies. But this is precisely why exercises like Orion 26 matter. Their purpose is not to prove that everything is perfect, but to reveal where systems crack under pressure so those weaknesses can be corrected before a real crisis. The conclusion is straightforward. This is not merely the movement of a French carrier group and not merely another multinational exercise. It is a practical rehearsal for a new European model of war, multi-domain, coalition-based, technologically dense, and built for prolonged confrontation. In this model, the primary question is no longer who strikes first. The primary question is who can preserve command integrity, supply continuity, infrastructure resilience, and coalition political cohesion for longer under simultaneous military and hybrid pressure. That is why the Charles de Gaulle transition to the Atlantic within ORION 26 is not just naval news, it is an indicator of how Europe is preparing for the most demanding form of modern war.